Now then, get your equipment, your quiver and bow, and go out to the open country to hunt some wild game. Genesis 27:3.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Food for the Plot. If you're new here, my name is Garrett and this is an outdoor podcast where we talk about land, wildlife, stewardship, conservation, hunting, and the deeper meaning behind why we do what we do out here. I do apologize. I know it's been a while since I've done an episode of Kicking Feet Outdoors or a podcast in general. Last week was my finals week for college, and now I am officially graduated. I have my Associate of Science in Agricultural Business, and very thankful and blessed to have gotten that out of the way and to be done with college in general. Anyways, today we're diving into a topic that honestly fires me up more than anything else in the outdoors world: habitat improvements and small property management. And I think this is an important conversation because so many people believe you need hundreds of acres and giant equipment to make a difference for wildlife. But the truth is that some of the best habitat improvements I've ever seen were done on small properties: 5 acres, 10 acres, 15 acres, even less. A lot of us don't own giant farms. A lot of us are working with small hunting properties, family ground, maybe permission farms, maybe even just a backyard. But that doesn't mean you can't create better habitat and better hunting while helping wildlife all at the same time. So today we're going to talk about how to think about small property management, the biggest mistakes people make, habitat improvements that actually work, how to maximize limited acreage, and some lessons that I've personally learned the hard way. And hopefully by the end of this episode, you walk away realizing that improving habitat isn't just for big landowners. Anybody can do it, and you can do it on any property, no matter the size. So let's get into it. Part 1, changing the way we think about small properties. I think one of the biggest misconceptions in the hunting world is that habitat work only matters on large acreage. You hear guys say, well, I only have 8 acres, I only have 15 acres, there's no point. But wildlife doesn't look at property lines. Deer don't care whose name is on the deed. Turkeys don't care. Pollinators don't care. Rabbits don't care. They care about food, water, cover, safety, and diversity. If your property provides one of those things better than the surrounding ground, wildlife is going to use it. And honestly, smaller properties also force you to become smarter. You have to become intentional. Every tree cut matters. Every trail matters. Every food plot placement matters. One thing I've learned from working on smaller pieces of ground is that habitat quality almost always beats habitat quantity. You can have 200 acres of clean, wide open timber that holds very little wildlife. And right down the road, there's a 10-acre property loaded with native grasses, thick bedding cover, food, and edge habitat that absolutely explodes with wildlife activity. And I think that's encouraging, because improving habitat isn't about owning the most land, it's about stewarding what you do have. There's actually a verse that fits this pretty well. Luke 16:10 says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much." And I think that applies to land stewardship too. If we learn to manage small properties well, we develop skills and appreciation that matter regardless of acreage. Part 2, the biggest mistake small property owners make. So yeah, let's talk mistakes. And honestly, I've made this mistake myself early on. The biggest mistake I see on all small properties is trying to do too much. People want giant food plots, wide trails, open shooting lanes everywhere, clean woods, park-like appearance, and before they know it, they've removed all the security cover. On small acreage especially, cover is king. Food matters, water matters, but security cover is what makes wildlife comfortable during daylight. If a deer can feed somewhere else but feels safer bedding on your property, that's huge. One lesson I learned personally is that sometimes the best thing you can do is simply make an area thicker. Not prettier, not cleaner, just thicker. A lot of people struggle with that because messy habitat doesn't always look good to humans. But wildlife loves messy. Downed trees, native grasses, brush piles, young regrowth, transition edges, that stuff is gold. I remember one area where I originally wanted everything to look maintained. Cleaned up fallen limbs, trimmed everything nice, opened it up, and the wildlife usage dropped. Later on, I started letting certain areas regenerate naturally and adding screening cover. Within a couple seasons, the amount of deer sign and overall wildlife activity increased noticeably. That was a huge learning moment for me. Part 3, food plots on small properties. Obviously, we have to talk about food plots, because food plots are usually the first thing people think about when they hear habitat management. And food plots absolutely have value on small properties. if they're done correctly. But here's something important. A food plot alone does not create good habitat. You can plant the best seed blend in the world, but if a deer doesn't feel safe entering it during daylight, you're mostly feeding them at night. So, on smaller acreage, I think food plots work best when paired with screening cover, nearby bedding, travel corridors, and low pressure. One thing I really like on small properties is using oddly shaped plots instead of giant open rectangles. So, your curved edges, hidden corners, hourglass pinch points, those designs make wildlife feel more secure and create better movement patterns. And honestly, diversity matters more than plot size most of the time. I'm a big believer in mixing species: clovers, brassicas, cereal grains, native browse, pollinator species. Different plants benefit different wildlife at different times of the year. And one thing I've really started appreciating is that habitat work shouldn't only revolve around deer season. If your property benefits wildlife year-round, your hunting usually improves naturally anyway. Part 4. Native grasses, pollinators, and edge habitat. This is probably one of the most overlooked parts of small property management: native habitat. Everybody wants food plots. Not enough people focus on structure. Native warm season grasses like switchgrass can completely transform a property, not only for deer bedding, but for turkeys, rabbits, songbirds, pollinators, and the overall ecosystem health. And the cool thing is, even small strips can make a difference. Maybe it's a fence row, a field edge, around a backyard, along a ditch, around a food plot. That edge habitat is incredibly important. One thing I've noticed over time is that wildlife thrives in transition zones, where woods meet grass, where thick cover meets open ground, where different habitat types collide. That's where movement happens. And honestly, pollinator habitat deserves more attention too. Things like, your black-eyed Susans, purple coneflowers, milkweed, clovers, native wildflowers. Those species help way more than just the bees. They improve insect populations, which helps turkey poults and songbirds. They improve soil health, and they even add diversity. Everything in habitat management is connected, and on smaller properties especially, diversity can make your property stand out from surrounding land. Part 5. Water sources and small details. Sometimes the smallest improvements create the biggest impact. A small watering hole, a brush pile, a hinge-cut travel corridor, a screened access trail. Those little details matter, especially on smaller acreage where every moment is concentrated. One thing I've learned is that access can make or break a small property. You can build amazing habitat, but if you're constantly bumping wildlife, entering and exiting, you're just hurting yourself. So think about wind direction, quiet entry routes, screening cover, and where wildlife actually wants to travel. Sometimes improving habitat means improving how you interact with the property. And honestly, I think patience is one of the hardest parts. Habitat work takes time. Trees grow slowly. Native grasses establish slowly. Soil improves slowly. A lot of people quit too early because they expect instant results. But nature works in seasons and years, not overnight. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." And habitat work honestly reminds me of that a lot. You might not see massive results for the first season, but consistency compounds over time. Part 6. My advice for beginners. If somebody asked me, where do I start on a small property? I'd probably say this: start simple. Walk the property. Observe wildlife movement. Learn sunlight patterns. Learn wind patterns, and figure out what's missing. Maybe your property already has food but lacks cover. Maybe it has cover but lacks diversity. Maybe it lacks water. Maybe invasive species are choking everything out. Don't just copy somebody else's property plan from the internet. Every property is different, and honestly, some of the best improvements cost very little money. Removing invasives, planting cover, creating brush piles, protecting native regeneration, letting certain areas grow naturally. Those things can dramatically improve habitat without massive equipment. I'd also encourage people to stop obsessing over perfection. Nature isn't perfect. Good habitat isn't perfectly clean. And one thing I've personally learned is that habitat work becomes addictive in a good way. Once you start noticing more turkey poults, more deer sign, more songbirds, healthier soil, better movement, you begin appreciating the land differently. You stop viewing the property as just a hunting spot and start viewing it as an ecosystem. And honestly, I think that mindset shift is important. So hopefully this episode encouraged some of you guys who maybe feel limited by acreage. Whether you have 5 acres or 500 acres, you can improve habitat. You can create better cover, better food, better diversity, and better wildlife movement. And honestly, small properties can teach you some of the most valuable lessons in land management because every decision matters. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with somebody who's into habitat work, hunting, conservation, or land management. And if you're doing habitat improvements on your own property, I'd genuinely love to hear about it. What's worked for you? What mistakes have you learned from? You can also follow along with a lot of the habitat work and outdoor content I post through Kick and Feed Outdoors on YouTube and my other platforms. I appreciate you guys listening to another episode of Food for the Plot. We'll catch you on the next one. Stick with it.